So, Aaron, maybe we'll get started and then.
Sure.
Okay. Should I start or should we? I can't remember if you were going to change the.
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay. All right, everyone. I'm Ellen Baum. I'm delighted to be the president of Friends of Baxter State Park board president. And I want to welcome you to what I believe could be our largest annual meeting. We have people coming from all over. And even though I really look forward to an in-person meeting, it's great that we can get the kind of reach that we have with Zoom. And it's going to be quite a shift for all of us when we can actually see each other in person again. I also hope that this is the last Zoom that we have in which the annual meetings are only 6 months apart. We sort of waited last year and waited last year and waited last year and finally decided we would still have our annual meeting in 2020. But I think we're going to try to get back on schedule after this. And because we're really finally getting a glimpse of our new normal, and our new normal is likely to be a chance to see each other in person. One of the best things I did that was not on Zoom this past winter was have 2 winter trips up in Baxter Park. And I hope many people on this call were able to get into the park this winter as well. You know, as usual, it did not disappoint and just confirmed what a treasure the park is. And for me, just how fortunate I am to be able to be in this position, working with friends. I just want to say a couple of things. While we had COVID, it was a time for us to get our operational ducks in a row. And that has benefits, will benefit across the organization. You won't call Aaron's telephone number in order to get friends from now on. We'll actually have a real friends number. And there's just so many more things that are kind of operate as a real organization that weren't there before. And a lot of that is due to having a year of a deputy director. That's Mary Weitzman, who just added enormously to the smooth and improved operations and our increased visibility and our membership numbers. So we now have real staff teams and real staff meetings with Aaron, Mary, our communications director, Kathy Brown, and Sarah Holland, who's our membership person. And I just want to thank all of them for the competence and energy that they brought into this year, which was a challenge for everyone. And I want to thank our board, who, you know, some of the board members I've never met in person, but I have a pretty good sense of who they are because everyone just sort of continued to work hard. And I want to thank all of you as members for the support you're giving, for the love of nature, for the love of the park. So I think we're in a transition and it will be different next year, but we've had some reflection time and I think there's some real benefits that we've had, even though I would not choose to go through this year again. So I'm going to turn things over to Aaron. The first thing he's going to give is Zoom meeting logistic instructions, and then he'll just take it from there in terms of, he'll take it over from there. So
thanks, Ellen. So we wanted to take a minute at the beginning of the meeting to orient all of us to the features of Zoom that we'll be using for voting and for questions and for other forms of participation tonight. Some of you are probably shaking your heads because you've spent so many hundreds of hours on Zoom this year that you know it like the back of your hand. But if not, I wanted to walk us all through the tools we'll be using. So first of all, this is webinar format that we're in. Many of you are probably used to seeing the huge grid of people participating, but with over 200 people signed up, that is not, oh, thanks, Jim. You're not seeing my video. There we are. So it's larger than is practical to use with just to be able to see everyone. So you're only able to see the speakers, and no one else can see you or hear you unless you turn on your audio or video. It's turned off by default. But when we get to question and answer parts of the meeting later, we do have the ability to turn your audio on if you want to ask a question. We also have some handy tools down at the bottom of your screen that we'll take a quick pass through now. So the first tool is the chat. Many of you have already discovered and been using the chat. It's very handy for sending messages back and forth. So if you have any tech issues, if you're not seeing whoever's speaking, if you're not getting the audio or video or having other issues, Mary Weitzman, our Deputy Director, will be monitoring the chat. You can reach out to Mary and she'll do her best to help you with your question. The chat is also very useful for sharing things with other participants. So right now, I'm going to be posting in the chat a link to download the materials for tonight's meeting, the agenda, as well as the packet of meeting materials that we're going to be looking at together. So many of you who connected early already heard me say this 10 times, but for those of you who have just connected, if you click that link in the chat, you'll be able to download a PDF of our agenda and materials for tonight. The second feature is the Q&A. You'll see down at the bottom of your screen. That is a good tool for asking a question that you want to make sure we see and have a chance to answer if we can. So later on, when we have some folks presenting, if you have a question for one of those speakers, you can pose your question in the chat and we'll do our best to answer it. The next tool I want to highlight is raising your hand. You can see my hand raised up here on screen. Each of you can also raise your hand. If you want to get our attention, other ways are not working, you're not able to, the chat's not working for you for some reason, you can always raise your hand and we'll reach out and make sure you have a chance to ask your question or speak or whatever you need. So if any of you have any questions on any of those tools, you can pose them to Mary in the chat and she'll help you get that sorted out. The next tool, which we're going to be using is we're going to be voting on screen using Zoom's polling tools. So we have a couple votes to take care of tonight. And when we get to that point of the meeting, you'll see a window pop up on your screen with choices, usually voting yes in favor or no, not in favor of what's being proposed. And so voting is not anonymous. Your vote is tagged to you as an individual. And I just want to highlight the fact that according to our bylaws, only Friends members can vote. So if you are a current Friends member, please vote. We need your voice on these issues. But if you're not a member, please don't participate in the voting process. So if you have any questions on any of those things, go ahead and ask them to Mary in the chat. The final thing I wanted to mention for Zoom is that we are recording tonight's meeting, and I just wanted to give you all a heads up that the meeting is being recorded. So I think that's it, Ellen. We can.
Yeah, so giving everybody practice on voting. I know many of you have only had a chance in the last couple of minutes to look at the minutes from our October 22nd, 2020 annual meeting. So we can let you look at them for a minute and see if anyone has a motion to accept. We'll still have a chance to discuss.
So the way we're going to do motions and seconds tonight is that if you'd like to make a motion or if you have any discussion about what's being proposed, you can either raise your hand and speak by audio, or if you just want to make a motion, you can do so in the chat and we'll have it as a part of the meeting record that way. Okay, so I am making the motion. I am seconding the motion. Do we want to have any discussion in the chat if anyone has any questions or comments about the minutes?
All right, hearing none, seeing none, I'm going to call for a vote on our minutes from 2020.
All right.
Okay, Aaron, this says that host and panelists can't vote.
Yeah, I'll get that fixed for the next one. But for now, you board members, if you just want to log your vote in the chat, we'll get it recorded that way. Okay, we'll give it another. Give it another few seconds. Thanks, board members, for your votes in the chat. So we have 68 folks who have voted. Is anyone having trouble voting? If you are, can you raise your hand and we'll help you out? Okay, 71 votes. Okay, Bindi, we'll reach out to you. Let's give it another minute or so here, Ellen, just to make sure everyone's been able to vote. Okay, anyone else? If you're having any issues at all with voting, can you go ahead and raise your hand in the chat so we can help you out? Okay, all right. Okay, thanks everyone. So I'm going to show the results of the vote on screen. We had 74 votes in favor, 0 votes opposed, plus a handful of votes in favor from board members via the chat. If there is anyone who was not able to vote using the on-screen voting tools, please send us a message in the chat and register your vote that way. But Ellen, it would appear that the motion passed.
Great, thank you all. All right, so we're going to move on to the business portion of the meeting now. And it's our intention that we'll be done by 7:30. So unlike other annual meetings that are a little bit longer, and given the fact that we had some reports 6 months ago, these are shorter, maybe shorter than usual. So I want to start with you, Nate.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you can see me yet. You can, okay.
Yep.
My name is Nate Taft. I am the treasurer and chair of the finance committee. And as Ellen said, I'm going to try and be very brief. In your meeting packet, you'll find 4 documents that flesh out my overview comments, which you can take a look at on your own afterwards. The balance sheet is the first one, and that's as of December 31st, 2020. The second is the budgeted and actual income and expenses during 2020. We also have pie charts of aggregate income and expense categories for 2020, so you can take a sort of quicker look at that. And then also we have our 2021 operating budget in the packet. As was the case with many organizations, in 2020, there were substantial challenges, and that included us. But due to our staff's hard work to adapt to these challenges, we ended the year in a solid financial position. And broadly speaking, our program changes due to the pandemic restrictions somewhat lowered our expenses And our fundraising efforts paid off in the form of sustained income. For the remainder of my report, again, I'll try and keep it brief. I just want to highlight a few key points from the financial documents, which you can take a look at yourself. The first is that on the December 31 balance sheet, it shows an increase in our general fund and especially in our endowment fund balances compared to the end of 2019. And this really, again, specifically reflects our successful fundraising efforts, as well as lowered expenses. Our 2020 budget versus actual statement also, sort of details how we got there. And I just want to mention a few things about that. Specifically, our grants income was substantially higher than budgeted, even when not counting a PPP loan that we successfully converted to a grant. So that was really great news there. We also set a membership record this year, or in 2020, which is great to see. And our higher than budgeted membership income reflected that too. Our restricted and unrestricted contributions were down, so our actual income ended up just shy of what we budgeted. So overall, a solid finish to a challenging year for sure. The last piece is that our expenses were substantially lower than budgeted, however, and that was largely because of pandemic-related programming changes. And so our net income for the year after expenses was more than 10% of our budget. So a really, really solid finish. If you want to take a look at the 2021 budget later, I'll just give you a couple sort of overview descriptions of what we intended there. So the budget was constructed largely based on our pre-pandemic planning goals, but was really informed by our pandemic experience. So we're sort of looking forward to moving back to a more normal summer. And as happened last year, we are prepared to amend our plans and budget if the pandemic restrictions require. And Aaron's going to talk a lot more about, I think, the programs themselves. But the accelerated, vaccination rollout is increasing our confidence in being able to return to a relatively normal year. And again, Aaron will address all of that in much more detail. And that's all I have for my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Nate. And if people have questions, I think we'll, just put them in the chat and we'll try to answer them as we get them. All right, we have Aaron giving the membership and member engagement committee report, and he'll tell you why.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, we have board members who would otherwise be giving reports who have vaccination appointments tonight, and those in this year of the pandemic take priority over everything, including annual meetings. So I'm honored to be giving this report on the behalf of a committee who has just worked so hard this year on building our membership. So I want to highlight a few things and a bit of our trajectory over the past year. So first of all, at this point last year, we were experiencing a 20 and at sometimes almost 30% drop in membership renewals during the early months of the pandemic. And I'm sure we all remember last March and April and what that was like. Our entire attention as a society was focused on keeping ourselves and our family members safe, as it should be. And friends knew then, and we know now that many of our members are facing very difficult circumstances. So we made a standing offer last spring to extend memberships indefinitely for anyone who was not able to renew due to the pandemic. And that we felt, really strongly that we would, especially if folks were having a hard time, that we'd much rather keep people as members and wait until things got a little more stable in their lives and were able to renew. So over the summer and fall, we did make a fairly concerted effort to reach out to those folks and many of those lapsed members, so that what was a 20 or 30% shortfall in the spring had shrunk to about 15% by late summer, early fall. And then in October, we reached out to 30,000 recent park visitors with an invitation to join Friends. Many of you on this call may have learned about Friends for the first time through that mailing, or maybe you were inspired to join by that mailing. And at the same time, we ran a large membership campaign on social media. And through these efforts, we welcomed 362 new members to the organization in 2020. So we ended the year after things looking fairly grim in the spring. We ended the year with a record number of members, over 1,450. We blew through our goal of hitting 1,000 members a few years ago and are now well on our way to 2,000. So as well as a record amount of membership dues. And I cannot overstate the importance of that during a year when so many things, including fundraising for a lot of nonprofits, was really uncertain. So whether you're a new member or have been a member for decades, I want to thank each and every one of you for really leaning in this year and contributing your time and your membership contributions. And really each and every one of you make our work possible. So thank you. So this year we are also focusing on ways for members to stay engaged with the park, even if we can't be there in person or even gather together in person. So this membership committee has been working hard on a video series called How to Baxter that's going to cover a range of topics related to the park. So we've brainstormed a list of topics we're going to cover, ranging from day hikes in the park to visiting the park with children to how to treat your water, which Ellen is going to handle for us after seeing some folks demonstrating what not to do in the park this past year. And so I am happy to share with you here our very first video in the series, and you're going to get a sneak, an early look at it as attendees of the annual meeting. So I want to give a caveat here. Many of you have probably dealt with streaming video over internet connections of varying quality. So our internet here in the office, we're very fortunate, is really fast, but if your internet is not, you may have some issues with audio and video quality. So this video will be posted on our YouTube channel shortly. So if you don't get a good look at it tonight, you will have another shot at it in the immediate future. So I'm going to share my screen and we will take a look at our very first How to Baxter.
Baxter State Park offers backcountry experiences and lifetime memories, especially for fly fishers. Magnificent native brook trout abound in more than 50 lakes and ponds. Some are readily accessible, while others are remote and require long hikes or boat trips, making this an extraordinary experience even for veteran anglers.
Oh, we got him.
A few roadside waters in the park are stocked with hatchery fish, but most lakes, ponds, and streams contain wild, native brook trout. May and June are favorite times for park visitors to hit their secret spots.
Decent fish.
In 2020, through a conservation fellowship offered by Friends of Baxter State Park, local teen Sylvia Hart did an extensive study of fly fishing opportunities and fisheries in the park. Canoes are available for rent at waterfront campgrounds and many remote ponds for $1 per hour with life jackets and paddles provided. You'll need a key for most remote canoes. Just ask at the gatehouse or a nearby ranger station. Baxter State Park is managed as wilderness and special rules apply. Some waters are fly fishing or artificial lures only. Ice fishing and live bait are not allowed to protect fisheries. Be sure to check the Maine Fishing Laws booklet for current regulations before your trip. For more information, visit the Friends of Baxter State Park website. You'll find links. We look forward to showing you how to Baxter.
Everyone able to see that okay? Hopefully, yeah, great. So that video will very soon be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you would like to keep up with our series of How to Baxter videos, I definitely encourage you to subscribe to that channel. And we're also planning on sharing those videos with all members via email and social media, and members will get a look at them before the general public as soon as each video is available. So that's it for membership. And I'm going to hand it off next to Jerry Bly, who's going to deliver the report from the Public Relations Committee.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you all for joining in. It was a somewhat unusual year for public relations with Friends, as it was for most any endeavor. In fact, one of the most important things that Friends did was last spring and early summer, when the park had its hands full trying to figure out how to open up in a COVID world. They reached out to Friends and asked if we would help with developing the educational and publicity surrounding in the park. And as we do on occasion, when park management has their hands full with other things, we wholeheartedly agreed to step in and work with park staff to develop those materials, which proved part of their strategy to accommodate users in a COVID world. We continue on AT through hiker education program. Trying to ensure that through hikers something we've been doing now for 6 years, and you don't hear as much about it, and that's a very good thing because that means it's working. We distribute throughout along the AT in visited spots by hikers, from hostels to other such places, and it seems to be working well. Now, last year, the AT was officially closed for through hiking, that everybody followed those rules, and this year as well, it's anticipated, or it is been asked by the Appalachian Trail Conservancy that through hikers defer their hikes for another year, but we expect a substantial increase in hikers this year, and we'll continue our program. Publications, we continued our regular publications, both online and print publications. The newsletter, website, and all of that continues to attract a lot of viewership. This year we've expanded our social media presence. We established an Instagram account. Our followers on social media increased by more than 10%. And this is really the result of the work and the talents of Kathy Brown, our communications and outreach coordinator, and Mary Weitzman, our deputy director. Another COVID-related public relations endeavor is that, and you'll hear more about this later, I expect, but that our programs in a COVID world received a lot of publicity, both print and TV publicity. Once again, held a successful sign auction, a cooperative effort between Friends and the park. The park provides us with the old trail signs that are no longer in use. We make them available in auction style pre-holidays. And this year, we could tell that people were looking for things to do, and it was just fierce bidding. We had over 145 registered bidders. We made over $14,000 amount of money that half goes to Friends and half goes back to the park to support their work. It's a fundraiser. It brings publicity to Friends, and it's a fun activity for all those who are looking to gather a little bit of Baxter in their home or business. So that's the report from the Public Relations Committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. All right, do we have Alec, who will give a report from the Policy Committee?
Yep, I'm just working on getting Alec connected now. He should be here. Should be in momentarily.
Okay.
Hey, can you see me?
You can.
Okay. So from the policy committee, a few things to report. It's relatively quiet. On the legislative front, there do not appear to be any bills that target Baxter State Park. There was a bill being considered for submittal, never was submitted as far as I know, to change appointments to the LUPC, but that apparently didn't go forward. On other fronts, on Katahdin Woods and Waters, we're actively engaged in the management planning process through Aaron largely. As a stakeholder, a partner, and a neighbor, we're continuing to advocate for management that will provide a conservation buffer to Baxter State Park, including relocation of the Katahdin Loop Road further away from the eastern park boundary. There is a mining proposal on Picket Mountain, which is about 20 miles from Baxter State Park, and we're carefully monitoring that proposal. I can tell you from my history in watching these things, in many cases, these are sort of exploratory efforts by a company that wants to get a permit and then market the enterprise to somebody else. And as in recent history, none of them have really come to pass. So we're paying attention and keeping track of that proposal. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Alec. So I want to turn it over now to to Josie Quintrell, who's both the vice president or co-chair with me, and also the head of the nominating committee. So thank you, Josie.
Thanks, Ellen, and good evening, everyone. I'm happy to give this report on behalf of the committee, which consisted of Jerry Bly and Peter Millard. So, you know, Friends has consisted of three key things: our membership, our board, and of course, our incredible staff. So there's 15 board members, and we have 5 board members that rotate off every year. They serve for 3-year terms. And this year we also have one particular board member who stepped down. And before we go into the nominating, I want to recognize Jim Andrews. So Aaron, I don't know if you want to show your screen. So Jim's been a member of Friends since 2002. He's been on the board from 2013 to 20. And he has an amazing love of the park and a wide range of talents and expertise. He organized for many years several trips for members into the park and guided them. He's a registered Maine guide. And he's a lawyer and has this incredible encyclopedic knowledge of the park, which was really helpful to the board and on policy issues. So we just wanted to recognize and thank Jim for his service on the board, and we will miss him. We're giving him this picture. It's by Donald Lawson. It's one of the ones that showed in the Friends of Baxter calendar a few years ago. So thanks. And so I just wanted to say that in your package, you can, there's a lot more detail on the people being nominated today. But the 5 retiring board members have all agreed to be up for nomination. So that includes Ellen Baum, our current chair, Jerry Bly, who you just heard from, Peter Millard, Jim St. Pierre, and Nathan Taft, who you also heard from earlier today, who is our our treasurer. And then to replace the remaining time in Jim's tenure, which is 1 year, we're really pleased to have Carla Ritchie join us for a 1-year term. So that's it. And I think, Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you for voting.
Okay, let's do motions and seconds. Ellen, if you're ready to call for a motion. Yep. Okay. Looks like
I just moved it. So if somebody would just second it, I just moved the slate.
okay. So
Whoever-
I've seen.
Alex.
I've got a second from Peter Millard was the first hand I saw. Thank you, Peter. And several other seconds as well. Thank you, folks, everyone who raised your hand. Okay, so Ellen, do you want to call for any discussion, or are you ready for a vote?
No, if there's any discussion, I think we'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
All right. Seeing none, let's vote.
Okay. So the vote that you're about to see on your screen is for the motion that was just made, which was to elect the entire slate of nominees to the board of directors as presented. So you're going to see just two options, yes in favor or no, not in favor. And as before, if you're not able to vote on screen, please register your vote in the chat and send your vote to all panelists or all attendees, your choice, in the chat so we can make sure to log your vote. Yep, and board members who are panelists and not able to vote, yep, you can just go ahead and log your vote in the chat as well. Thank you. All right, I've got 82 folks who have voted. Thanks, everyone. Anyone having issues with voting, if you want to send a chat to Mary or raise your hand in the chat. I'm checking in right now with folks. Just let us know if you need any help with the voting process.
So while people are voting, I'll just do a shout out to all our members. If you have any interest in joining the board, please let us know. We kind of keep a running list of people who are interested in serving, and you can reach out to Aaron or me.
Great. Okay, so far we have 85 votes in favor, 0 votes opposed. Anyone else? Last call. If you have a question or an issue about voting, please raise your hand in the chat and let us know. And I'll close the vote in about 10 seconds. Okay, I think we've got everyone. So I'm going to show the results on screen. 85 votes in favor, 0 votes opposed, plus a handful of votes in favor from board members in the chat. So thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, okay. Josie, are you set, or do you have? All right. All right. Well, thank you all so much. So now it might be, it is so much fun for me to introduce, Evan Sipikowski, who is, it's just always a pleasure to hear what he has to say about the park. So over to you, Evan.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Aaron, for putting this on. Mary for for helping behind the scenes here. Josie, Jerry, Alex, the rest of the board. I look forward much more to connecting with you folks in person next time, and who knows, maybe in the park. That'd be great too. So for this early spring, it feels right to talk about things that are emerging. And right now there are a few different levels of things emerging for the park that I'll talk about. I'll go a little bit through how we're all emerging, more than just the park, emerging from this global pandemic. And on another level within the park, how we're emerging from a period of turnover and transition and change within this organization. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about the Katahdin region and how that is emerging from the ashes to embrace a new future. And I think you guys know a lot about that through the Friends programs. All this is intended to be a sort of state of the park, though I don't have time for the Jensen Bissell style run through of what we've accomplished, what we're working on, what we hope to work on next. Nor do I have his intellect or ability to frame these concepts for you and make them understandable, but I'll do my best. Besides beseeching your continued support for the Friends as well, members, I'll talk about two areas where you can lean in and support the park. One in helping us recruit the best possible people to work here, and I'll get into that in a minute. And another is to continue to spread the word about the park. We recently did a poll inquiring about the people of Maine and their attitudes and awareness of park facts and how often they visited. And there's a lot people of Maine could learn about this great gift that was given to them by Governor Percival Baxter. So we'll start with emerging from the pandemic, which just feels sort of central to everything. The thing we are all feeling, and park staff and visitors are no different, but it feels like there's change afoot. It feels like there's something else coming. Though case numbers are rising again due to coronavirus variants and pandemic fatigue among people and states. The widespread availability of vaccines, which have prevented some folks from being here tonight. And actually my wife just received, so I had the kids up until a few minutes ago, so she could go get hers too. This is giving us hope. It looks like we're approaching a light at the end of the tunnel, I think. And for the park, this has challenged us in so many ways. All of us have been asking, how can we keep ourselves, our colleagues, our neighbors safe? How do we find and share science and truth and combat the misinformation that people want to believe and follow? How do we stay sane and stay strong as this period of isolation and uncertainty drags on? And specifically here at the park, we had a lot of questions back in March or April a year ago, and they were around how do we make sure that people can come and get what they need from this rugged and wild landscape, but ensure that they can do so safely, and that we can protect our staff, our visitors, and local communities, and of course the natural resources that Governor Baxter was clear we should prioritize. So as we all know, many recognize that getting outside is a great antidote for this anxiety and uncertainty. I don't think I have to tell this crowd about the sort of mental health benefits of fostering a connection with the natural world. But I think a lot of other people have learned more about this in the last little bit, and all the numbers are suggesting that people did a lot more recreating outdoors. They did a lot more recreating locally. They couldn't go other places. So it was safe to do. It wasn't too far from home. And of course, it alleviated a little bit of this anxiety, baseline anxiety that we were all feeling as we tried to navigate through a unprecedented time. So visitation was up all over the country and probably the world. I haven't looked at those numbers, but and people were going outside all over the place. At the outset of the year, or the last season, of course, we delayed our season until July 1. We were concerned about navigating the tricky waters of performing search and rescue when anybody could be COVID positive, and all of the safety concerns about our staff and our visitors and our rather vulnerable community up here in the Katahdin region. And I think most of you know that we ended up reducing our day use parking by almost half. And while it was difficult to tell people no, and that the park was full and they need to make a reservation or come back later, it meant that we could provide a safe recreation opportunity for those who were willing to be flexible and plan a little ahead. And with that, I want to give a little quick shout out to our reservations and gate staff folks who really bore the brunt of those who couldn't get what they wanted and were not happy about it. Probably the baseline anxiety we were all feeling contributed to that as well. But our strong staff had empathy and a strong skin that enabled us to provide safe recreational opportunities in the quiet style that park visitors expect. Once you got past the gates, I think the experience was really similar to any other year. And despite this reduction in access, our visitation for day use anyway was flat. So a reduction in parking access by 40 or 50% in most places resulted in flat numbers year over year in terms of day use visitation, which I feel like we dodged a bullet there, and we really we hit the numbers fairly correctly to make sure that we didn't engage in an untoward amount of search and rescue and crowding and things of that nature. I want to brag too about the protocols my staff put into place. I think they were really well thought out and based on CDC guidance and good science. And they were tested, despite the fact that we had one known case among the staff, which of course was contracted outside the park. We had no known transmissions in the park this past year, and that I think really speaks to how the staff and visitors took these protocols seriously and remained vigilant, and really proud of their foresight and commitment to these inconveniences. The combination of manageable vegetation and a solid team aligned in their vigilance ensured that we could continue to keep natural resources our priority, and it also kept us all safe. So again, we weren't overwhelmed in the same way that a lot of other outdoor recreation destinations were, and we were able to weather this fairly well. This gives me a lot of confidence that we'll be able to handle the busy year we're expecting now and make it a great success. We are certainly expecting a busy year. It's been a few weeks since I've had a chance to run the numbers, but we are pacing way ahead in terms of camping reservations of 2019. It doesn't, comparing to last year is a little bit weird since we didn't have May or June. But we're pacing, last time I checked, about 75% ahead of where we were at the same point in 2019. Remember that has to do with a 4-month rolling reservation, and now we're booking for August 7th. So things are rolling right along in the reservations office. We're also for Maine residents booking for day use parking reservations, and I think in the first 12 hours we had 94 day use parking reservations, and then I learned today that at least one Saturday, I guess the only Saturday that we've booked for so far in August is totally booked in Roaring Brook. So I'm sorry if you had that the idea to hike the mountain that particular Saturday. It does seem like the day use parking reservations for the east side are already booked. So we're certainly anticipating a very busy year, and it might start a little bit earlier. We haven't had much of a winter up here, And as I'm sure most of you that are in the Northeast haven't either. And it's dry now. We didn't get the same sort of freshets that come from spring snow melt, and we're moving right along into spring. So that'll attract more folks to come and get out, and hopefully mud season won't be so long, so that we can provide as much access as possible without damaging plants in this vulnerable period for them. There are the same concerns and protocols in place this year as last, of course. Bunkhouses are rented as single party cabins. Screaming deal for those of you who haven't seen this. And the same science-based recommendations around social distancing and masking are in place. So we're, despite vaccinations, despite that, how that's changing the landscape here, most of the guidance remains pretty similar. We are, and much of the staff is very glad to be reducing some of our efforts in terms of disinfection, which has proved to be less of a concern than spreading the virus through direct connection with other people. But I don't think visitors will really notice the difference between us cleaning restrooms 3 times a day versus 1 again. So I think all of this taken together, we're emerging stronger, not only as a park, but also as people. My sense is that we're COVID weary. We're tired of this, but we're used to a lot of it, and we're getting stronger. And many of us are getting vaccinated, and that all of this is contributing to my sense of optimism and hope for this upcoming season. And the park staff are strong, smart, and vigilant, as they certainly demonstrated last year. So in another sense, we're emerging as an organization from another round of transition. And you may recall that I think it was 3 years ago, the park was anticipating not only a new director, but 3 new authority members with a change in the state administration. And I remember then President of the Friends, Dick Klein, commenting on this at, I think it was the annual meeting. It was down in Augusta, and he'd remarked on the vulnerability of this time of transition, with so many important positions vacant and in transition. And I, from my position at the time as resource manager, spoke after him and pushed back a little bit that yes, the park may experience some bumpy times like this, but the structure around the park to protect it that the governor put in place through such careful legal action over such a long period of time, engaging the legislature the dozens of times that he did, is strong enough to protect it so that the park can't be vulnerable. I recognize now that I was wrong, because the park can be vulnerable in ways that I hadn't yet contemplated. But I was right as well, as the independence that the governor extended to the park and the particular way in which he made these gifts to the state again, combined with the fierce advocates for this wilderness, such as yourselves and other visitors to the park, as well as the park staff, will make those vulnerabilities very difficult to exploit. So we're in another period, we're sort of still in that same period of turnover, I'd say. I think what I didn't understand was that these things take a good deal of time. And I think whenever there's such turnover at the top of an organization, that tends to fuel turnover throughout. So the park is no different, but we're in a state right now that dawned on me the other day. We're trying to hire a quarter of our year-round staff at this point, or our year-round positions. which is a difficult place to be. We have 24. We're trying to hire 6 right now. We're in different stages of all of these, so it feels like we're getting somewhere. It feels like, okay, at least we're recruiting for these positions, and we're intending to fill them at some point. But we're still very much in the tunnel, looking out at the light, not quite getting there yet. And it seems like we're in a similar place with the pandemic, right? We can see the light out there, but we're still very much in a tunnel. So this is one area that I really wanted to enlist your help, all 101 of you participants. Oh shoot, I think since I started talking, we lost 3. Sorry, Aaron. I'm gonna throw a couple links into the chat, so that you can go to them if you so choose to help us with our recruitment efforts, or you have a sense of someone who might be good for these. Oh no, can I only send the chat to all panelists, or can I send it to everybody?
Aaron,
Yeah, I think you should be able to send it to everybody, but if not, bounce it to me and I'll share it again with everybody.
All right, I'm going to throw it into all panelists, so you should get it there. Okay, so there's that one. All right, I'm going to throw 2 in there. These are the 2 positions that we are currently actively recruiting for and have postings out for. But I'll go over kind of where we are with several of these briefly as I can. So just to give you a scope of sort of the park organizational structure, we are about 24 year-round positions, and we are about 44 seasonal positions at this point. Folks, most of whom come on in about a month, May 2nd, beginning of spring training this year. And that all of this serves to support our 10 campgrounds and trail system and the business functions back here in the office, as well as understanding our natural resources. So you can also go to our website and look at our employment page, and that should be fairly up to date on those positions that we have available. It is not right now, I will totally admit. The HR director position, while still vacant, is not something we're going to be actively pursuing now. We're going to put that on pause until we get to the other side of the season here, as we do with many sort of administrative tasks. But the 2 that I just put into the chat, if you are able to see them, and if you're not, I'll supply these to Aaron and hope we can follow up with this information. But they are a maintenance and transportation supervisor. So this is really a position that's responsible for, it's essentially a project management post to lead and coordinate maintenance efforts throughout the park, and supervises a small team. So that's a pretty important sort of general contractor type role that is vacant at the moment. And the other one that we have out, and I just tried to share with you, is a management analyst position, which is dedicated to the financial controls and analysis. We need to understand the judicious use of the park's resources, fiscal resources, as well as to contribute to managing other important data sets relative to park management. So there's sort of a finance person and a maintenance person that we're looking for right now. We're really looking for great leaders in these places. The management analyst position will not be a member of the leadership team. We have also been looking for a human resources director, which we intended to be a member of the leadership team. We haven't sort of found that right leadership quality in somebody that has the right human resources background to really do soup to nuts human resources for the park and support all 68 of us. So that's the one that we're going to wait until the fall. But if any of you are aware of some wonderful seasoned human resources person who is in love with the Katahdin region and wants change, please put me in touch, or put them in touch with me. We're close to hiring an interpretive specialist responsible for much of our outreach and messaging. And we're also close to hiring what we have, a supervisor, which is a supervisor ranger, essentially a field ranger. We're almost completed that hiring process. And lastly, and this one is not out yet, but is really important. It's a sort of new iteration of what those of you who knew Gene Hochwater or Mark Edwards knew as the naturalist position. And this is the Natural Resources Director now. And it's the position is responsible for natural resource monitoring and management, and also visitor information and management. So it's a big job with a lot of supervision, and sort of the work part of it is focused around understanding the state of knowledge and synthesizing the state of knowledge around natural history within the park in order to educate park staff and visitors, and generally sort of converse with the scientific community around the impacts that we're seeing here in the park. And a reminder, just sort of another note that these positions are focused in various areas and on particular core functions within our sort of 6 core functions. But we are a small shop, and you have to wear many hats, and we don't stay in our lane here. We certainly do a lot of collaborating. And so what I'm asking, and I'm hoping that this reaches some folks that may be interested themselves, but help us find some curious, humble, passionate people that we need to steward the park. Yeah, I hope you can help us with that. I'm recognizing that I'm getting low on time, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, because I think Aaron will fill a lot of you in on the third area where I think that I see emerging right now, which is the Katahdin region as a outdoor recreation destination, in concert with other industrial pursuits in the area. But this is a really new look for the area, and I think it's a really exciting one. And we're just beginning to sort of feel confident enough about what we have here and the amazing assets that we have in the outdoors to start promoting it. And as many of you know, we at the park can't promote the park directly. We're forbidden to do so through the deeds. Essentially, the park is supposed to be passed on and promoted by word of mouth. But I think we can engage with local community members to help promote the region, and it does the park a great service to do this. And I know that you understand this because your organization has been working on this for years now. But the park is not a vacuum, and it exists within this larger context and community. And while we're working to build collaborative relationships with other folks that are our neighbors, including the monument and the Nature Conservancy, and as well as sort of other agencies that are involved in some similar work, including the Maine Forest Service and other law enforcement groups. I think what the important work that you folks have been doing is connecting the people that live in these communities with the park and with the natural world, and helping everyone around here to recognize that this is the future here. And it's the benefit to the park on the other side of that is that I see this particularly acutely now, as we have so many positions out for hire. We just had a failed hiring process, frankly, with the Human Resources Director position. And we need collectively to sell this region in order to recruit and retain the best talent here. so that we can have the best talent supporting Governor Baxter's objectives within the park. So I think you understand that, and I think you've really been helping us out with programs like the Youth Conservation Corps and the Maine Youth Leadership program. And thank you for all of that. I think the other part there is helping the sort of helping people to understand what the park's about. I'll be very brief with going over a piece of this polling survey, but we thought it was a good idea to sort of poll the people of the state of Maine to understand what they knew of the park, what they thought about the park, and get a little bit of a sense of their experience there, and if they wanted anything to change. So very briefly, a fifth of the people that the polling company reached out to had not heard of Baxter State Park, which was interesting. This was conducted entirely within the state of Maine, so this is roughly representative of Mainers. And about half the participants in the study had been there. Didn't matter really if you had been there or not that much. Your feeling for the park, it was overwhelmingly positive, even if people didn't know the park. They really liked the concepts around it and liked the fact that it's there. But what they didn't know was surprising. I guess it wasn't. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't surprising. We know this. We know that, and this has been part of our messaging for a long, long time. But what was really surprising is the level to which people didn't understand sort of some of the tenets of the park. Jensen used to refer to this as the three-legged stool that brought the park together and made it stable and strong. The three legs of the stool include the land that Governor Baxter donated, the governance structure set up as an independent structure, which we know is the authority, and of course the endowment that Governor Baxter started that still provides anywhere from half to 2/3 of our annual operating budget. And it continued to grow as the market has in this past year. So only, and I often flip these things, but only about 5% of the respondents knew that the park was independently funded. And only about 7% of the respondents were aware that we were not part of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, or the broader state parks program. And this independence, I think, is incredibly important to our ability to carry out our objectives, which of course are the wishes of Governor Baxter. And so that's where I ask, that's my second ask for you members of the Friends, is to sort of spread the word about how this place is different, how we are unique, how we are not part of the state park system, and how we are independently funded, and importantly, do not take any general fund dollars, don't take any tax money. My understanding from other surveys is that nobody really cares that much, but when you tell them how you're funded, but I think it is important to get over that sort of taxpayer entitlement to something piece, and that can really help people with that. So learn about the park, learn about the unique structure here, understand those legal and administrative differences that make us unique and allow us to have unique objectives, such as prioritizing wilderness over recreational opportunity, which is not a common way of managing outdoor recreation. And spread that word. We can provide information, but we can't advertise. That's sort of our limit. But I think you can help us by telling all kinds of people how wonderful this place is and how special it is, and particularly those that might be interested in a maintenance supervisor job, or a management analyst job, or a natural resources director job, or human resources job, as we try to staff back up so that we can be in a good position to look forward with whatever threats and opportunities we see on the horizon for the park.
Thanks so much, Evan. Fantastic. We will have some time for questions of Eben, but we actually have a members forum and a pretty extended Q&A session coming up in a minute. So why don't we keep your questions in your mind. Eben, if you're willing to stick around for a few minutes and be part of our panel fielding questions during the member forum at the end of the meeting. I have a few more program updates to give, and I will be very brief, and then we can move on to the member forum. So thank you so much, Eben, for that. And I want to cover two main topics, and one of them really dovetails with what Eben spoke about the Katahdin region communities. So we all know that feeling when you cross the boundary into the park. You feel like you've entered another world, and the rest of the outside world kind of falls away. And you have that feeling that it's so hard to get anywhere else on Earth, frankly. But so much of what happens inside the park just depends heavily on what happens outside the park. So Eben recruiting for these positions depends on the Katahdin region having livable communities where people actually want to move or live for a job. The park depends upon surrounding communities for truck parts, for snowmobile parts, for solar panel installers, for raw materials, for places for people to live, for so many things. The Katahdin region communities are key to the park's success. And Friends has really been trying to take that holistic view of the region. Clearly we're focused primarily on what's happening inside the park boundary, but we're trying to take a more holistic view of what's happening outside the park boundary and how that affects the park. So things like being a member of the Katahdin Collaborative, the group of organizations and folks from the Katahdin region that's trying to develop a vision and a path forward for the region. This is going to look backwards, but this is the Katahdin Gazetteer that we all developed together over the last few years with thousands of data points of community input, listening sessions that maps a way forward for the Katahdin region. Friends has been a member of that effort, and we are, and the park has been really engaged in that effort as well. And you'll see these post-it notes on the top. This is where the park and where Friends are flagged for really big, important things that the region is looking for in the future. And I keep this on my desk, and that all those pieces really, really matter to the park's future. So some of you live in the Katahdin region, and your voice in that process is really important. And those of you who travel through the region, stopping, supporting local businesses, being part of those communities that are so important to the park can really make a big difference. So been part of the Katahdin Collaborative. We're also part of an effort, Working Communities Challenge grant was just awarded to the Katahdin region. Friends is part of that effort by the Boston Fed and a whole team of consortium of organizations from around the state. And the goal of our vision as a team is to create a pipeline for youth in the region to get excited about the outdoors and then gradually move into careers and in the outdoor industry. So all these vacancies at the park, wouldn't it be wonderful if there were kids growing up in the Katahdin region who are excited to be rangers and excited to fill these positions, Eben, that you're trying to bring folks to town for. So Friends is part of that effort as well, along with many other organizations who we're teaming up with. So community is one thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't really think the importance of that can be overstated. The second is youth programs. Eben alluded to our youth programs, and I wanted to just give you a brief update on where those stand for this year. Clearly, the landscape of the pandemic is changing day to day. There are moving targets layered on top of other moving targets, and Friends is navigating that landscape along with everybody else. Right now, our main youth wilderness leadership program is actually looking pretty good for this summer. We have the benefit of an absolutely wonderful partner in the Chewonki Foundation, that has medical support staff, nurse, a health center, rapid 15-minute COVID tests, things that really make it a lot safer to run a youth program in the woods. That program was canceled last summer. We offered all 10 kids who were accepted a spot in this year's program. We're hopeful that most of them, or many of them, will be able to participate this year along with some alternates. So we're hopeful that that program will run in August 3rd through 11th. Our Baxter Youth Conservation Corps is a bit more up in the air at this point. We are really closely tracking the trajectory of the pandemic, especially the variants that are more heavily affecting young people right now. And again, that's all changing day to day. We hope to have a decision in the next few weeks on that. Plan A is to go back to our regular trail work model, 20 kids working full time on trail work for 6 weeks in July and August, donating several thousand hours of trail services to the park. And along with 2 higher level intern conservation fellow positions, doing independent studies, writing assignments, photo, writing for the Friends website, all sorts of other tasks drawn from our program veterans. That's plan A. Plan B is to do what we did last year, which is to hire 8 older high school students as conservation fellows. All of the work would be remote, all socially distanced, and much more pandemic friendly. So those are the 2 choices we're looking at, and we should have a decision in the next 2 weeks or so from our youth programs committee about which way we're going to go. So those are my program updates. I think we can open it up now to our members forum. Let me give you a run through of how this can go. So you are more than welcome, if you have a question of Ellen, of any of our committee chairs who presented earlier, of Eben from his presentation, or questions of me. You can ask your question using the Q&A tool down at the bottom, and we'll certainly read your question aloud so that everyone can hear it and then answer it that way. I also can turn on your audio and share. You're welcome to just say your question out loud and pose it to whoever you would like, and share that way. So I have heard from a couple folks before the meeting started who wanted to be able to speak during the members forum, and have lined those 2 folks up to be able to share first. So we'll start with those 2 folks, and then we will open it up to the floor and for anyone who would like to speak and pose a question. So the first person I'd like to welcome to speak is Barbara Burgoyne. And Barbara is a longtime Friends member, and she is also an author, and recently published a absolutely wonderful children's book about Percival Baxter that she wanted to share with you. Barbara, are you all connected and okay?
All set. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay, great. So I love Baxter State Park as much as you all do. And I asked myself some questions many years ago about who was Percival Baxter, and how did he come to acquire the park? What inspired him? And who needs to know his story? And I decided that the children of Maine need to know this story. And so I gathered oodles of information, and I accessed the wonderful historians of John Neff and Howard Whitcomb. I worked with Melanie Money at the State Library, and also worked with Eben to secure some digital archival photos. And after years of crafting this story, I finally published in January. And I'll give you a quick peek of the book. I packed as much information as I could into the book. It's called Percy's Patience, the story of Governor Baxter and Baxter State Park. And the intended audience are children from, say, 8 to 12 years old, but I've had first graders and grandparents tell me they absolutely love the story and love the book. So I have watercolor illustrations from my neighbor, Jameli Bissett. I included a map of the park, as well as later on a map of Percival Baxter's park acquisitions. there's a narrative that runs through the book, and the narrative explains the early days of Percival Baxter and some of the significant events of his life, and later on some more about his civic career. And then it flows down to a very extensive section in the middle about Percival Baxter's 1920 expedition to Chimney Pond and the climb of Katahdin. And in addition to the narrative, there are footnotes on every 2-page spread, so that they're signified with a little leaf, and they provide supplemental information to support the story. In addition to the watercolor illustrations, as I said, we have some maps. We have archival photographs of Percival Baxter, and in lots of quotes by him. And in the back, fun facts about Baxter State Park, and a 2-page spread of timeline of significant events in his life. And finally, some selected references and more information. So there's something in this for everyone. I hope that you will go to the Friends of Baxter website, click on the support tab, and find the Friends of Baxter store. It's $19.95, and the profits will go to support the Friends of Baxter initiatives. I hope you'll purchase the book and support the Friends, and also share this story with a young person that you love. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Barbara. Fantastic. Yep. Thanks so much for sharing. So if anyone has any issues accessing the Friends store, please reach out to Mary or I, and we're really proud to be able to sell that book. And yeah, thanks so much, Barbara. So our next speaker who would like to share during the members forum here is John Lloyd. So John, if you want to turn on either your audio or your video or both, you have the floor.
Good evening, and thanks you for giving me a few minutes. I'm one of the 3 trustees of the Baxter Park Wilderness Fund Trust. The other 2 are Buzz Caverly and Jim Garland. And I thought we are contributing this year, fiscal year, $360,000 to the park's budget, and we'll be doing so that amount or greater amounts going forward. And I think it's important that the Friends have an understanding of the fund that Frank Troutman started and what it does for the park. We just finished a 2.5-year odyssey of distancing ourselves as a instrumentality of the state of Maine and becoming an independent 501c3 charitable trust, of which the Baxter State Park is the beneficiary. We, as of the close of yesterday's market, we manage a fund of just $6 shy of 30 million. We are making each quarter making $90,000 contributions to the park. We just voted 2 weeks ago to continue that level of distribution through the next fiscal year. And we tried to do this so that the park can plan around what we're going to be contributing each fiscal year. We try to give at least 6 months to a year's heads up on that, so that Eben and the authority can plan on that money. We have a website. I'll apologize for it's very crude, but it does have some basic information, and it's in the process of being updated. It's Baxter Park Wilderness Fund.org, and if you wish to check us out, you can go there. And certainly, and I won't do it now, but if anyone has any questions, the contact information for the 3 trustees is located on the website, and we'd be delighted to receive your questions and answer them. Thank you for the time.
Thanks so much, John.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's open up the floor now for questions from anyone who has a question. So you can, again, you can pose your questions in the Q&A tool, or you can raise your hand, and I can actually turn on your audio and you can ask your question out loud for everyone to hear and interact with whoever is answering it. Oh, thanks for your comment, Barb. Yep, it is great to hear about Frank Troutman's legacy for sure. And thanks, John, for sharing all that information for us. Anyone have a question for any of the speakers from the evening so far? Okay, Bill, would you like to say your question out loud, Bill, or do you want to write it in the chat? Okay, I've turned your audio on, Bill, so if you unmute yourself, you should be able to ask your question out loud. Okay, we'll stay tuned for that question. Any other? Okay, Mary, do you want to help Bill with unmuting? Any other questions? Hey, Bill, maybe if you want to just go ahead and try to type your question in the chat. Yeah, Bill, that might, we're still not able to hear you. That might work better. I'm just going to pull you right into the meeting, Bill, as a panelist, and you can try to ask your question that way. Any other questions while we're waiting for Bill's question? Okay, Joni. So Joni wrote, I'd like to hear more about the issue with Katahdin Woods and Waters Loop Road being moved and why. Great question. So as many of you know, the east side of the park, Katahdin Lake, is extremely close to the boundary of the park on the east side. And the current location of the loop road on Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument reaches, it comes within less than a mile of Katahdin Lake on that east side. So there are, Friends has had some concerns about that. Frankly, for over a decade now, our board has been raising those concerns and that folks would access Katahdin Lake and kind of circumventing the park gates, other entrances to the park like the AT trailhead, you know, where there's a large influx of people, where there's actually a ranger station down there, an AT steward greeting hikers. Katahdin Lake, with an easy access point from the east, has the potential for concerning levels of access into Katahdin Lake that we believe would compromise the wilderness character of that part of the park. So our interest is in having that loop road moved to a bit further away from Katahdin Lake, you know, more in the range of 2 or 3 miles rather than the less than a mile that it is now. So prior to the monument being designated, there were some issues with folks hiking in and having fires and sort of, you know, camping illegally on the shore and coming into the park from the east side. That was all pre-monument designation, but it kind of gave a flavor for what might be possible from that side with a large influx in visitors. Anybody else on the Friends board or Eben want to take a swing at that one before we move on? Joni, did that answer your question enough? Okay, so Barb Bentley has a question about the status of Katahdin Lake Wilderness Camps. Any progress there? Eben, do you want to take that one?
I think the status is pretty similar to how the status is that it has been for the last few years. My understanding is the owner of the camps, which are leased on leased ground, owned by the park, is trying to find folks to run those in a commercial manner. I haven't heard anything recently towards success or failure in his efforts.
Okay. Thanks, Evan. So Frances had a question. I'm so thankful to Governor Baxter and his tireless work and precious gift to us and all that history entails. What is being done currently to acknowledge and educate park staff, volunteers, and the public regarding Wabanaki history on this land we refer to as Baxter State Park? Excellent question. I can get us started, and then Evan, do you want to fill in with your recent work? So Friends has been a part of a program called First Light Learning Journey for the past 3 years. Jerry Bly, who you heard from earlier, and I have been participating on behalf of Friends. And that is a program aimed at bringing conservationists from around Maine and Wabanaki people together to build trust and share learning. And that has been one of the more powerful learning experiences in my life. And I know Jerry and I we've both had a lot of really incredible experiences through that program. And we've been bringing that learning back to the Friends Board, which is now meeting every other month to focus and alternating with board meetings to focus solely on discussing Wabanaki issues related to the park. And we're trying to do our own homework first before we start really tackling substantive decisions or changes. We're trying to do the learning that we need to do that work well. But we are very much aware of those issues and trying to do a lot of learning surrounding them. So Eben, do you want to, or Jerry, anyone else want to hop in on that? You want to go ahead, Eben?
Sure. Yeah, I think echoing what the efforts that the Friends have been undertaking. I think a lot of our advisory members are also undertaking the First Light Journey. We're, as a staff, very much in a learning mode as well, trying to understand this history and current event and in a more meaningful way. There's, of course, we have relationships with various representatives from mainly the Penobscots, but also other Wabanaki tribes as well. And so this has brought a different level to those conversations, and is something I think right now we're just in a learning mode, and we have a long learning road ahead. I can grab this question from Bill Gunther. I hope I'm not butchering your name, Bill. He writes, for many years, I used to be the facilitator of opening day in January. I know it stopped a couple of years ago. Any chance that it could come back in sort of modified form so that the outfitters don't hog all the prime sites at prime times? I hope that's not actually what's going on in terms of outfitters hogging prime sites at prime times. In terms of commercial use, we are working to develop a more substantial commercial use authorization process. We're a few years out from the ability to do that effectively, but we have begun to engage with commercial users, and we're more aware than we have been in the past of how many there are and how often they're visiting the park. And I don't think they are, in fact, hogging all the prime sites. But we ended the opening day in January, in part because it just sort of felt inequitable to have folks who were able to take a week off in January and come and camp out on park headquarters, which was also a liability issue, to get access to a lot of the best sites there, and really sort of rolled this around for a while and determined that really the most equitable way to provide opportunities for reservations was the 4-month rolling reservation period system that we have now. The reservation system is an ever evolving beast, and we're always working on sort of loopholes, and how to make that as equitable as possible, as people as they are want to do discover our loopholes and workarounds. So we're continuing to work on making that as equitable as we can.
Thanks. Great question, Bill. One other thing I would add on to our previous question about the Wabanaki issues, the newsletter that is about to arrive in your mailbox, the cover story on that newsletter was written by Maria Gerard, who is the executive director of Wabanaki Reach, member of the Penobscot Nation, about the history of Wabanaki people and Katahdin, the connections between Wabanaki people and Katahdin, past and present. Really powerful essay. Also longer than we could fit in this one issue of the newsletter. So the second half of her essay was going to be the cover story in the next summer newsletter issue as well. So Wabanaki issues are going to be front and center in our next two newsletter issues, and I tackled a little bit of that in my column as well. So we are trying to raise awareness among Friends members for sure. Yeah, so I guess just wanted to add that. So Eben, are you seeing this question from Charlie? Yeah.
Yeah, happy. Charlie asked if we, Charlie Jacoby asked if we could tell a little bit about the Trails program and what projects we can expect to see on the ground this summer. We have a number of trail crews coming in to work on various projects, mostly around the Hunt reroute, and finishing up some work on the Dudley reroute, as well as fixing some parts of the A-Ball Trail again. The main efforts are focused around there. But I do want to take this opportunity, thank you, Charlie, for another piece of what we're building back into this organization is the Trails program, and actually retaining some of our Trails talent in year-round, or a few year-round and several seasonal positions. We're going to rebuild a small crew by 2022. Sorry, it's like a budget thing that's based on fiscal years, so it's in fiscal 23, but it's actually calendar 22. But right now we have a trail supervisor, a trail specialist, both of which are year-round, and a trail crew leader who will be a half-year position this year, who will be both the trail specialist and trail crew leader will be coordinating some of the crews on the ground, and the trail supervisor will sort of take a little bit higher level view of this. Brennan Turner, we hired last fall for the trail supervisor role, came to us from Connecticut, and is really quite talented in terms of putting this together. I'm sure you'll hear from him at some point. Nathaniel Seifert is the trail specialist currently as well, and we're really excited to see what those two, plus Dawson McKenney, a graduate of the Youth Conservation Corps program, in the trail crew leader position this year. We're excited to see what those three can pull off in conjunction with a few different professional crews, AMC and Jed Talbot's trail crew. And some other help, as well as a few trail adopters. And I see now a question coming in from Jensen. Yeah, a brief update on the park's effort to improve stream crossings on park roads. Great, yeah, can do. Thanks for the primer. Yeah, we saw an opportunity with COVID when we were closed to start working on some more of these stream crossings. These are generally, we're looking at stream crossings that have had undersized culverts and so have impeded fish passage or other aquatic organisms from upstream, downstream flow, as well as the fact that these sorts of crossings were not resilient to increasingly intense storm events. So we're beginning to replace these. Jensen started this effort back with one arch culvert back in 2015 or so. And we put in 2 bridges last year on the Roaring Brook Road. You'll see them if you head out this way. Next year. They're way far away from the stream in terms of where the abutments are, and I think they're going to be there for a lot longer than any of us will. And we're hoping to continue to sort out how we can do this. We had the advantage of doing that before the season started and after the season ended last year. It's really operationally difficult to shut down the road, especially on the tow side of the tote road side of things. So we're trying to gather up all kinds of things to make that a concentrated effort to get these done and improve 30 or so more crossings in the next 10 years or so. And I'll just quickly, Jensen's asking also about the Trout Brook crossing work. We are remediating lead paint issues on the Trout Brook Bridge at Trout Brook Crossing, just across from the South Branch Pond Road. That started today. They moved equipment in there and are setting up scaffolding to remediate the lead paint that has been there since the 70s, I believe. So that project will last about a month, and we intend to be finished before the season actually starts. This early spring helped us out a little bit with getting in there, although I think the road's going to turn to soup in the next few days. So. Did you have sorry.
Quite all right. Read the question from Charlie. Eben, can you give us a taste of a research project or two that occurred last year or may happen this year?
Sure can, Charlie. Thanks for that question as well. One really interesting project that is ongoing this year, started last year, but was somewhat delayed from COVID considerations, is a project by Dr. Aaron Putnam of the Climate Change Institute at the University of Maine. They're looking at how glaciers receded back 10 to 12,000 years ago on the mountain in this really interesting way by chipping off small pieces of rocks and then analyzing a few isotopes of beryllium to understand when cosmic rays first hit these rocks. So not solar rays, but when rays from the cosmos came down and actually hit these rocks, it somehow changed the chemistry of these beryllium isotopes, and you can very closely track how glaciers receded as a result of this. Really interesting geologic look at that. Also, he's doing some things with the recent LiDAR flights to understand some other annual moraine features and those sorts of geological pieces. Also ongoing is Arthur Haynes project, collecting very tiny bits of very rare plants all through mainly both the North Basin and the Great Basin on Katahdin, and in order to preserve those seeds of these very rare plants for a long time. So there's some very talented people working on the botany within these areas of the bowl, and some folks working on geology and many other projects going on. We typically have about six or seven a year that are sort of ongoing, and we hope to sort of focus that work even more with the natural resource director position once they can get here and get their feet under them.
Great. So a question from Josie Quintrell. Eben, can you talk about any changes you and your staff are seeing in the park related to climate change?
Yes. Should I do so? There's tons of these. Almost everything I just referred to in terms of making sure that we can preserve our understanding of some of these very sensitive plant species, to the increased storm events. Last year's example was 4 inches of rain in 3 hours on the South Branch Pond Road, and that pretty much washed out the road. So these are climate change effects that are having an impact both on the on just the general ecology of the area as well as park infrastructure. So we have to approach these concerns from both those angles. We have all kinds of questions about what this is doing to the Krumholtz and the tableland, it's affecting everything. Let's schedule another hour sometime and talk about those things. Maybe two, maybe a day.
Maybe a
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. Great. Any other questions? If you have a question you'd like to ask out loud, you can raise your hand. If you have a question that's easy to type, you can type it. And if not, if we've exhausted our questions and curiosity, I think we could consider wrapping up. I am very grateful for all the time that everyone has spent with us this evening. Ellen, do you have anything you'd like to?
No, I want to thank everybody as well, all the panelists, Eben, all the board members, all the people who asked really good questions. We were, when we were going to have a live board meeting in 2020, it was not a live annual meeting. We were going to have a 3-person panel to be talking about climate change impacts in the park and how we measure it and what we know and what we don't know. So maybe we'll make sure we try to move that to our meeting in 2022, since it will only be more relevant 2 years later. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I'd like the board to stay on because we have about 2 minutes of business that we have to perform. So we'll give everyone, Aaron's going to bring you on, and the rest of you, I look forward to seeing you in the park, or seeing you at our anniversary on September 9th, or seeing you somewhere. But take care of yourselves and be healthy and be well.
Thanks so much for coming,